Alright, so we are picking up in chapter 22, section 2. Just a recap of where we ended yesterday. We talked about the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife, and it was done by a Serbian revolutionary, and Austria's really not happy, and so they're going to take aggressive action. And so this leads back to those two major alliances that we were talking about, the Triple Entente with France, Russia, and Great Britain, and then the Triple Alliance with Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy. And so World War I is going to officially begin 1914, July 28th. 2 days after, Russia is going to mobilize their army and prepare for a possible conflict with Germany. So Germany is going to declare war on Russia and France. The reason why they include France in this is because they know that France is allies with Russia, and so they're going to chime in. So they're going to send troops through Belgium to conquer Paris, trying to take France out quick. Germany said basically Belgium's neutrality is merely just a scrap of paper. They're not really neutral. We can go through them. We don't care. And so England's not going to like this, so they're going to declare war on Germany. So everybody's declaring war against everyone except for Italy. Italy is not going to join the fight and help Germany and Austria-Hungary, even though they're technically in an alliance with them, because they have a problem with what's going on. They're like, we're not doing this. This is not a defensive war. You are going on the assault, and so they are going to leave the Triple Alliance. So the Triple Alliance is no longer triple. And so let's talk about Germany trying to get into France and take over Paris. By September, Germans were only 15 miles away from Paris, and then we have what was called the Miracle on the Marne. And so as you can see right here, here's the Marne River, and they just crossed through Belgium, and they're coming, and they're really close to Paris, very, very close to conquering all of France. But when we had the Miracle on the Marne, the Germans were pushed back across the Marne River, and this saved France, because France would have fallen if Paris were to fall. And so the next goal or objective of Germany was a race to the English Channel and the North Sea. So it's going to go through Ypres, Belgium, and it's right up here. British soldiers are going to hold off the German armies at a great cost. They're going to lose about 50,000 soldiers. But both sides, neither making progress, are going to resort to digging trenches, basically really fancy ditches. And that's how a lot of this war is going to be fought when on land. It's going to be fought in the trenches. By Christmas, the Western Front went all the way from the English Channel up here, all the way from the English Channel to the Swiss Alps here. So it basically goes the entire border of Germany and France. It was hard to attack with frontal assaults because there were trenches, there were machine guns, heavy artillery, there's barbed wire. So it's hard to just have a full-out fight like what we used to see in wars. And so people are going to have to adapt the way that they fight. The trenches were great for providing you cover, but they were damp, they were dirty, they were vermin infested. So fighting in trenches will also be a factor in the death count because of disease. So that's just great. Some new things that are introduced during World War I. The Germans are going to introduce the flamethrower and also poisonous gas and the gas mask. And then the Allies are going to create the tank. And these are new war items that we will see featured in this war that will play roles in future wars. So still talking about France, the Germans are going to try to invade the city of Verdun, and after about 24 hours of heavy artillery and fighting, the Germans are trying to get through, but French General Henry Pétain says, to quote Gandalf from Lord of the Rings, "They shall not pass." And sure enough, he holds true to his word. After 6 months of intense fighting, the Germans don't advance more than 4 miles. For 6 months, you only gain 4 miles. That is a waste of time and loss of life. It was definitely at a cost for the French as well. The French are going to lose over 500,000 soldiers, and the Germans will lose over 400,000 soldiers. So it was very bloody, but that's what you get for 6 months of fighting and not giving up. The British are going to attack the Germans on the Somme River, And this is called the Somme offensive. The army was pounding the Germans for several days, and then their soldiers are going to charge, and the Germans are going to give them a serious spanking with machine guns. And over 600,000 British soldiers are going to die, and they only end up gaining 7 miles. So the Somme offense is one of the most detrimental losses for the Brits in World War I. It's still referred to as this day as a really brutal battle. The Germans are going to lose more than 500,000 soldiers. So the Kaiser, he's not happy. He, quote unquote, dismisses the chief. He fires him, probably killed him too, if we had to guess. And he's going to hire 2 other guys to take his place. So it's Paul von Hindenburg and Erich von Ludendorff. Those are quite the German names. You'd never guess they were from Germany. And they're going to end up being supreme commanders of the Central Powers. And by the time we get to the end of the war, they're basically the dictators calling the shots. And so now let's talk about Serbia. Austria-Hungary is going to invade Serbia in 1914, so still in that first year of the war. But their leaders were really incompetent. So after 3 failed attempts to conquer Serbia, they're finally going to have success. But it's only because they're going to have help from German and Bulgaria reinforcements. So kind of sad. Austria-Hungary, who kind of started this whole thing, are really not able to hold their own. But the greatest threat to the Triple Alliance is Russia. They are large in numbers, but not in weapons. But they definitely have the manpower. They killed 3,500 Austria-Hungarians. The Germans did beat 2 Russian armies at Tannenberg, but they also were able to conquer Romania, Russia's only eastern ally. What really helped Germany out is the Russian Revolution in 1917. That's going to be 3 years of fighting. That Russia is going to have this turmoil politically and economically within their own nation, and it's going to lead to the Russian Revolution. They're going to force Tsar Alexander II to abdicate the throne. We're going to talk about the Romanov family in the next chapter and help explain all of that. But this revolution was a communist revolution led by this guy, Vladimir Lenin, and this is called the Bolshevik Revolution. So after the Tsar has abdicated, Lenin is now in charge and responsible for Russia, and he's running the show. He figured, I don't want us to be involved in this war. I want us to concentrate on our communism, focus on things at home. So they're going to leave World War I by signing the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk with the Central Powers. And they're going to surrender a lot of territory and resources to Germany just so they can get out of this war, which is a shame, because if they had just held in there 2 more years, they would have been on the winning side. So now talking about the Middle East, there was a British colonel named T.E. Lawrence, who's also called Lawrence of Arabia, and he's going to lead an Arab revolt against the Turkish rulers. So he's going to create a little unrest there. But the largest British offense in the East is going to be led, it's called the Gallipoli Campaign, and it's led by Winston Churchill. And his goal was he was going to try to hit Germany by going through the back door of Turkey. Now, surprise parties only work when it's a surprise. But the secret got out, and the Turks and the Germans both had enough time to build up forces, and so the British are going to leave after only 250,000 people die, and so they're like, we're just going to back out. Secret's out. This plan's not going to work anymore, and Churchill was forced to resign. Now, we're not going to hold this against him in the future. Churchill's still going to do great things for his country. It's just not going to be necessarily from a military standpoint. And so then we have the war at sea. We talked about the war on land in Europe. Now we're talking about the war at sea. And this is where the crucial invention of the U-boat comes into play. A U-boat, it's a submarine. And so this ship called the Lusitania was leaving New York, and it was carrying a bunch of just civilians, but it was also carrying supplies for the British. And ambassadors were telling people, don't go. Wait for another ship, wait for another time, let the war pass. But these people, they traveled at their own risk, and it was hit by torpedoes from German U-boats, and it was estimated that about 1,200 people died. Now, this is going to be a problem for the United States because it was a civilian boat. Yes, it was carrying supplies for the British, but it was not a warship. It was non-aggressive. It was carrying a lot of civilians, and so very unhappy. So the U.S. is going to give Germany an ultimatum, and they're going to say, listen here, you cannot do this stuff. If you continue to fight in a dirty, uncivilized manner like this, we will have to insert ourselves. And Germany did not want the United States to join the war, so they agreed, especially at this point. We're talking about 1917. Everybody else has been at war for 3 years, but the U.S. hasn't. So the U.S. is well rested, well stocked. They still have their entire army and Navy intact. And so they really did not want this. The Germans really did not want the United States to join the war because the Germans knew that if U.S. joined, they would not join Germany's side. So about a year and a half later, Germany goes back to their old ways, hoping to defeat the British before the United States does end up joining the war. And we get the Battle of Jutland. The Battle of Jutland is the most important naval battle of World War I. The Brits are going to lose more than the Germans, but that's not what made this important. What made this important is the Germans lost so much that they had to return home, and their navy does not really come back out for the rest of the war. So their navy stays home for the rest of the war, which is one of their huge assets working for them, was how well they were doing from a naval perspective, and they were stuck at home now. And then they were also fighting in the air. So we're fighting on land, we're fighting in the sea, and we're fighting in the air. So we're fighting every way you can. Airplanes started out as just being used for scouting. And then while they were scouting, the pilots would fire pistols or rifles at each other, or they would drop bombs. And then later they decided to add machine guns that were synchronized with the propeller rotations, which I think is very smart, because how sad to be firing a machine gun and you accidentally end up shooting holes through your propeller. That could be a problem. So very smart that they were able to think, let's synchronize it with the propeller. And so whenever two planes from opposite sides ended up engaging in the air, they were called dogfights in the sky. And so with dogfights, you get the term aces. An ace is a pilot who shot down more than 5 other pilots. The most famous ace for the Triple Alliance was Manfred von Richthofen. He is more commonly known as the Red Baron. Yes, great pizza. But that's him. He is going to be known for shooting down 80 Allied planes. Very impressive. And the most famous ace for the Central Powers is going to be Eddie Rickenbacker. And he is going to shoot down 26 Central Power planes. So, not as impressive as the Red Baron, but still, it's a good number. And so that is going to be the end for Section 2. Section 3, we're going to talk about why does the United States join the fight. And that is what we have to look forward to on Monday.